welcome to another segment of Listen Up a Minute. I am Dr. Burt, and I am pleased and honored to have with us on the set today Tonda Wright, who is going to share her story, a very compelling story, about the death of her son and some of the events that took place during such a period for her. So again, we have Tonda Wright with her and her son's story, her son's name, Jonquan Wright. In order to share Tonda's story with the world, she has written a book called My Son's Fugacious Life. And from this book, there's actually a prelude that I would like to read, and it is a poem written by her son. My Fugacious Life by Jonquan Wright. They want to know about my life, but why should I tell? It's not like it's something special, just upsets and hell. Thinking I fell, never prevail. Just doing time, alone in my cell. See, I like to write things, hoping they change. But no matter how hard I try, the result is the same. Nothing but shame. To most, it's cool. Just like a game, stuck to my chain. Heart filled with pain. See that I know. Ask them, no show. Freedom must go. My Fugacious Life. Again, that was written by Jonquan Wright. Miss Wright, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we know this is not easy, but we want to help you get your son's story told and to also help you promote the book, because this book could probably help the lives of others. So to begin, share a little bit about your son and the journey you've been on since 2015.
Oh, wow. Jonquan was he was my only son. When he died, he was 18. He was one of those kids that curious. I called him Curious George or Baby Jesus, because he's always had an answer or a question, or he's going to find the answer, or he's going to ask the question if he's not if he's not clear. Bright kid, very smart in math. Just one of those kids that would try to make your day. I know all moms say that, but truly. Mm-hmm. So he was one of those kids that was playful, smart in school, but never wanted to stay in school. And when this tragedy happened to Jonquan, I think not only a part of me was struck, but it struck my whole family.
Of course.
To know that someone with such a young life experienced this tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happened in the tragedy? Well, of course, we know the tragedy itself by losing your son. Mm-hmm. But what happened to make you decide to share his story, your story, with the world through your writing?
Well, Jonquan got killed in 2008, August 2008. And at that time, DC Fire and EMS Department was the one to go to his rescue when he got shot. And back in 2008, I was an employee with DC Fire and EMS Department. And some things just didn't go right. They made some mistakes. I wanted answers. It wasn't clear exactly what happened and what didn't happen, and it's such as Jonquan, where he gets it from, I was determined to get answers. Mm-hmm. And it was one of these rare situations because I was told one thing, but the autopsy was telling me something different. And I wanted answers. And trying to go to the local media wasn't an option. Just telling people my story wasn't enough for me. Mm-hmm. And let me correct it, his story just mm-hmm. wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. I felt like this is my son that I lost. The answers, things are not adding up for me. I felt like I needed answers, and the only way to get it. I'm not an author. This is my first book. So I felt to put it out there, put it in a book. Maybe this book can help other people, can help people realizing when you go through tragic things like this, that you can bounce back from it. You still can, stand strong, even though it's, one of those situations where I hope for no one to be able to experience the death of losing a child. So it was something that I felt like I needed to put out. I wanted the world to know about my son. He wasn't a kid that, I don't think no kid should use their life, but he wasn't a kid that I felt that deserved not only you not treating him and taking him to the hospital to hopefully try to save him, but just to leave him there on the streets to die. I just felt like he deserved more than that. And I deserved more than that, and I deserved answers. So writing a book was to put it out, hopefully to help people understand my fight. It's a lot of families out here that's going similar things. Hopefully this book will help them be able to understand it's painful, but as a parent, you owe that to your child to fight, whether they're here or whether or not. You owe that to your children to fight, and I was determined to fight and put the story out there. So that's where it came from, because I just couldn't get answers.
So with the chain of events that took place with the D.C. Fire Department, I am assuming that this story, John Quan's story, became part of the legal system? Something went on in the courts?
It did. I filed a wrongful death lawsuit. It took me 9 years to fight it. The lawsuit was just, we came to agreement in 2017. It was one of these situations where I didn't want a lawsuit. I really just wanted an apology. Is what I was just asking for. Just say, hey, we made a mistake. We're human. I know we make a mistake. That's a huge mistake to make, but I think I could have dealt with it a little better. You saying that we made a mistake versus just ignoring me and saying no mistake was made when I knew that it was. So with that being said, I felt like the next thing to do is to file for a lawsuit. I'm not getting no answers. I'm getting ignored. I'm getting pushed over. I'm getting pushed to the side. It felt like they just didn't care. So the next thing for me to do was to file a lawsuit. So I filed a lawsuit in 2009, and to remind you, it was during a time where the lawsuit was going on. I still was dealing with burying John Quan. Also was dealing with the murder trial. So we had all this going on in 1 year.
And you were working for?
I was working for the fire department. Yes, I was working for the fire department, but only by the grace of God, I tell people, daily praying, having supportive people around, family and friends that you can, call in the midnight hour, 2 o'clock in the morning when you're crying and just can't figure it out. Was a lot for me because I'm a private person. And that was another thing about writing a book. I didn't want to write the book because I'm a private person. I didn't want people to know my inner thoughts or my feelings. Because in the book I talk about suicide. I felt that's what I wanted to do because I lost my child, and no one seemed like they were willing to hear the pain in the legal point of view. They felt like, hey, it's nothing they can do. This is just what happened. Move on from it. And it just didn't settle for me. But I thought about it, and I said, you know what? You're a child of God, and He wouldn't want you to do that. If you would continue to live your life and continue to pray, believe me, it'll work it out. So it did. 9 years later. It took a long time, and it wasn't easy, but
couldn't have been.
No, it wasn't. It was, nights of crying, being up, being upset, going back and forth with the court system, where they kept prolonging it, putting it off. We were supposed to go to court one day, and then they asked for an extension for the next, so they kept stretching it and stretching it and stretching it. But again, I knew that if I just stayed a course, it would work itself out.
And you really did stay the course, because you said the lawsuit was filed in 2009.
Yes.
And You won the lawsuit in which year?
2017.
2017. So we're talking 8 years of going to court, and 8 years of fighting and pushing. And you're commended. So, we know the love of a mother for a son is, or the love of a parent for a child is something that you just can't even explain the depth that you'll go to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I commend you, and I agree when you talk about God and where your help comes from, and needing to have other people work along with you, because that's a long time to be involved in saying goodbye for now, as I believe in, to your son, and also sitting through a murder trial as well as a wrongful death suit. So you're truly, truly, truly commended for that tremendously. So let's talk about the book. Okay. And how does the book begin, other than the beautiful poem that your son wrote that tells a lot about how maybe he was looking at life in some instances?
Yes. Well, it starts off talking about the life, because I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia. It's where I was born in Jonquan, and I do have another child that was born in Richmond, Virginia. So it just starts off talking about his past and dealing with him and his quirky ways and his playful side and that kind of thing. And it also talks about in the book when I heard that I was going to be a grandmother. And I just, it just took me for a loop. And it also talks a little bit about being a single parent. I was a single parent raising, 2 kids. And then it goes from talking about Jonquan, and I jump right into August 2008, his death, and what happened. And it talks a little bit about the person that murdered him and what happened with that person. And it also just talk about me dealing with the fire department, and it's a law. And it's a law in D.C. It's called the Public Duty Doctrine that a lot of people are not familiar with. And it's a law that people need to know about, whether you're traveling in D.C., you live in D.C., you're just visiting there for the day. But it's a law that's been on the books over 30 years. And it's a law that D.C. is not afraid to pull out when need be. They feel that they're not owed. They feel that when a tragedy happened with the police department or the fire department or wrongful death, that they're untouchable. And I talk about the lawsuit in there. I also talk about 14 other families in there that had dealt with the fire department, that had a tragedy done with their family member, and the fire department messed up or dropped the ball. So I talked about that. I felt like it was important not only to talk about my son, but to also talk about other families that's suffering or had suffered just like I have with losing a loved one, and then having this fight back and forth, because it's exactly what it is, with the fire department about what's right and what's wrong.
Now, those other families, are they involved in the court system as well, or legal system?
You have two of them out of the book that did. One family did come to my book signing that I had, and we talked very little about the situation because they still had an ongoing case, so we couldn't talk about it. My case was towards the end. And it just was, we all shared the same feeling. We just wanted answers.
Of course.
We just wanted answers. It wasn't so much about money. It was all about answers and just admitting or apologizing.
Right. And trying to prevent something like this from
yes,
happening
absolutely.
again.
Prevention that doesn't happen. And it's sad because before this happened in Jonquan, a couple years prior, a tragedy happening with another man where it's a big story, and DC Fire dropped the ball on that. And I said, I hope that never happens to me. And years later, it did. So it's something that's been going on for years with the fire department and their mistakes and trying to get them to pay for their mistakes, not just only in the pocket, but trying to recognize, that is something went wrong. And again, I said it wasn't about the money for me. I just wanted you to apologize. I felt like they were my second home.
Right.
Second family.
Right. Being employed.
Yeah.
Of course.
Being employed there. I loved my job. Some of the people there I liked and some of the people there I didn't like. But it was somewhere that afforded me a great life for me and my children. Sure. And I felt like I had been there for a while at that time. So I felt like they were part of the family. So it felt like a pain of no other from your family that hurt you. And you just want to be able for them to apologize. And that's just how I felt. And again, when I didn't get that, I went to writing.
And we know how writing can help to heal.
Yes.
And, talking about commending you to take this pain and to turn it into something that could possibly create strength for other families is really, really what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And it's a good thing because we don't always find the strength to do so. We don't always find it.
No, and it's not easy finding the strength, but for me it was, John Quan wouldn't want it no other way. He knew his mother as feisty. He knew his mother as a fighter. He knew that about me. So it wasn't time for me to sit on the couch and cry. It wasn't time for me just to forget about it. It wasn't time for me just to accept what they were giving or what they were saying. I felt like, hey, I got to play detective. I got to figure this thing out. I got to lay it out and figure exactly what went wrong and go from there. And I must tell you, it wasn't easy getting a lawyer. Nobody wanted the case. Of course. Because they felt like it's the District of Columbia, it's the fire department, it's huge. Right. You're not going to win. And they also felt like they couldn't help me sue their job because a lot of them worked for the government, so they couldn't do that. So the attorney that I did find, it was in Baltimore, a girlfriend. That's when I tell you when you have good friends. She knew my pain, and she said, I think I have someone for you. Just talk to him. So when I met with him and his father, and he said, it's no guarantee, but I'm going to do, I think it's a tragedy story, and I'm going to do the best I can with this case. And he did. And he stayed, and, because we lost in first court, and then I had to file for an appeal. Okay. And in the appeal, that's when we decided that we need to negotiate on trying to settle. So that's what happened. That's what you did.
So you even had the tenacity to keep pushing forward after the first trial didn't work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's just determination. I just felt, again, as a parent, as a mother, you just have to be determined to do, that's with anything in life. You have to be determined that I knew I couldn't rest easy, and I knew that he couldn't rest easy. I know he's resting now because he knew that his mother stayed the course. Right. She didn't give up. Right. She didn't fail. And I will tell people also, I talk about in my book about guilty, just feeling guilty as a mother of not being there, because I was at work that day when it happened, when I got the phone call. And I just felt like feeling guilty as a mom that I wasn't on that side of town to do what I needed to do. How good I would have been to see my child there and trying to work, I don't know. But I just felt like, the guilt trip kicked in. I felt guilty that you wasn't there. Yeah, you were working, but you should have been on that side of town when the call came out.
And that was a natural emotion for a loved one when you think, what could I have done to help in this situation? Yes. So tell me, I know at the end of, or when you completed the book, you felt some things. You felt like you were going through the healing process. But talk a little bit about, how did you feel when you were actually writing the book, when you had to retell stories and get them down on paper?
I was still emotional. As you can see now, I'm tearing up. The more I tell the story, the more easier it gets. But it took years of being this way. When I wrote the book, me and, because I had a ghostwriter. Shout out to Jessica Tillis Wright, awesome person, that helped me with the book. But it was more so she was crying and I was crying. So it took us forever to try to finish the book because it was just an emotional thing.
It had to be.
And then trying to remember, just making sure key points of dates and times and reliving the moment and, you know, so yes, it was very draining. But I figured when it's done, it's worth it.
Did you see progression, though, with your emotions? And not to say, I mean, to lose a loved one, and particularly, I mean, to lose a son, a child, we know that for years and forever, you always feel that pain and you always feel that loss.
Yes.
But did you feel like you were progressing through the grieving process as you wrote each chapter?
I felt like Wonder Woman with a cape on my back.
Okay.
That's how I felt.
So you felt the power.
I
and the
felt
strength,
the power and the strength that you're going to get this done. You know, with every tear that may drop and every tightness in your stomach and a tightness in your chest, you're going to get through it. Because when you're finished, people can know the real story, what happened. Not the story that's being told by someone else, not what they think they may hear on the news. It's the truth. It's coming from me. And that's how I felt. So when it was done, I was excited. I was happy to share it with my family. I actually let my family see it first before I put it out. And, you know, it was one of these things where, okay, I'm ready for the next test. The next task. I can tackle the next thing. So, and that's just how I felt.
For sure.
Yeah.
And did you think about how you would be empowering others by sharing John Quan's story?
That was probably the beginning main part of writing my book, not only for me to heal, for other people to heal.
Absolutely.
And I must say, mothers, I know it is a father that's involved, but for me, as a single parent, I felt like it was, something I needed to put out because there's so many times we have these mothers that are single parents and they go through this tragedy and no one really feels that, knows your pain. And I always say, you never know what somebody's going through unless you actually physically walked in their shoes.
That's right.
And that's how I felt. I couldn't tell another mother couldn't tell me about my pain because if she never lost a child.
That's right.
So for me, I wanted to put the book out for moms to say, hey, I done been through 3 of these tragedies things in 1 year. And I did it without falling to the wayside. I did it without, I thought about suicide, but I didn't do it. I thought about, just the end of the road, but I stayed the course to it. And like I said, I felt like a part of my healing, hopefully help another parent go through their healing. And it's not just for a child, anybody. And I talk about also in the book about, you may have lost your grandmother and it was somebody, your shining light. And if your grandmother was somebody that loved to do bingo, take up bingo, go and do some things just to keep you. It's important not to get depressed because it will take you away from here.
Absolutely.
It's important for you to do something in the grace of that person that you love and that you lost. If she loved to ride bikes, start a bike group. That's what I wanted to encourage. I wanted people to do something within to honor their loved ones, not just a child, but to honor the person that they love.
Absolutely. Well, you have certainly done a beautiful thing in honoring John Quan, and we're just so pleased that you were able to be here to share your story with me today. It means a lot.
Thank you.
And we hope that your book gets into the hands of many.
Yes.
Obviously, I hope that this segment will help that to happen, but we're going to keep in touch with you and just cheer you on.
Thank you.
And of course, share your story and share John Quan's story.
Thank you.
Now, before we close, what do you want our listeners to walk away with, or what do you want them to keep in mind when it comes to your story, John Quan's story?
Stay a course. Don't give up. It's not easy. Find that one good person that you can talk to. You definitely need someone you can talk to and lean on. And whoever you serve of higher being, get close with them. Because it honestly, in the midnight hour and that dark hour, believe me, it helps. It helps to get connected to a higher being. I also want people to know that suicide is not an option, because when you do that, then you're quitting. And your fight is for the fight for your loved one, no matter what situation it is.
That's right.
Quitting, to commit suicide is being a coward, because I just think that fight it. You will have, believe me, if I did it, a murder trial, a wrongful death suit, and bury my child all in the same year.
Yes.
Good God Almighty, it wasn't easy, but as you can see, 11 years later, I'm still standing, and heart is still filled with joy, and still willing to help people through their healing process. Beautiful. Because it's not easy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I thank you so much, Miss Wright.
Thank you.
And again, we hope that you purchase Tonda's story, John Quan's story, My Son's Fugacious Life. And remember the words that Tonda just shared with us. If you need to talk about something that you're grieving about, if you need help, reach out to someone. You can push through all things if you just know who to turn to. And again, Tonda, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on